We have already reached the time to start our meeting, so I declare the meeting open. Item 1 on the agenda, confirmation of minutes. Paper, CB bracket 4, 6/17/14 to 15. Minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of January 2015. It was sent out to members prior to the meeting. We haven't received any proposed amendments. Can I have the minutes confirmed? Dr. Helena Wong, I support your proposal to confirm the minutes, but then we have put in a letter concerning the UGC. But why don't we confirm the minutes? Yes, I propose the confirmation of minutes. I need to go over two other items before I answer your question, Helena. We have sent out some information papers since the last meeting. The details have been set out in the paper of the agenda. As to the date of the next meeting, it will be held on the 13th of April at 4:30 p.m., our next regular meeting. Two proposals from the administration. First of all, students' hostels in the northern part of the CU Hong Kong campus. The administration has proposed this item so as to brief the panel on the works project to build 2 blocks of student hostels, providing 676 student hostel places in total. The administration intends to come back to the FC in May. And then the other item is about provision of financial assistance to post-secondary students. For the panel itself, we can also have our own proposals. Since the last meeting, I went to Beijing, and then the deputy chair went to Germany. Therefore, I didn't have time to discuss with you and the deputy chair as to what should be done for the agenda next time. Since we have quite a lengthy agenda today, so why don't we sort of leave it till after the meeting so that I can take up the matter with the deputy chair to see what else can be discussed in addition to the 2 proposals from the administration. As to the point raised by Dr. Helena Wong, both Dr. Wong and Dr. Kenneth Chen have written in concerning the UGC's Research Assessment Exercise 2014. We wrote to the administration on the 25th of February, that is right after the Chinese New Year. A response has been given to me. I don't know whether you have already got it or not. Now, Dr. Chen, I think you are not happy with the reply. Gravely dissatisfied. I would like to ask the secretary to comment on this. No, I don't think we can reach this item because we've got 3 items on today's agenda. Can you specify in what area you are unhappy about the response from the administration? You think it has not been well written, or the content makes you unhappy? In all aspects, Mr. Chairman. Well, for the Research Assessment Exercise 2014, we have the report concerning the RAE 2014. It is quite clear that it has been leaked. That's your perception. The government said that it wasn't leaked. Now the administration has told us that strict confidentiality has been observed, but then it is clear that the confidentiality has been breached, so they are not answering our question seriously. Dr. Chen, well, you alleged that there was a leak, but then the government has denied. You need to back up your allegation with evidence. Every year we have DSE exams, and then many people have been talking about the leaking of the exam papers, but you need to show evidence. Well, evidence is clear. you have quoted a particular newspaper thinking that that's already evidence. I think it's better for you to consult the paper as to why it has obtained the information. I think we better challenge the administration as to why it has been leaked. The government has been saying that it hasn't been leaked, but it doesn't matter. If you are going to insist, I will just be on your side, and why don't you write back, and then I can take it up again with the government. I don't think we have time to get down to this item because we have got a few other items already. I won't give up, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, you haven't given me the chance to speak. I hope that at our next meeting we can make arrangements for the EGC to come and explain. Because the leakage is indeed a fact, because a day before the press conference, the content of the report was already leaked in the papers. In my letter, I've also said that in addition to this particular case, I think the UGC should also come to give an account on the RAD and its impact on the allocation of resources. Is a separate issue. I think they need to come and explain to us how the allocation exercise will affect the operation of the universities. All right, that takes us to the discussion items. I just want to remind members that in accordance with Rule 83A of the Rules of Procedures, if any member has any direct or indirect pecuniary interest in relation to any items discussed by us, you should disclose the nature of such an interest before you speak. First of all, we have the paper on education-related issues in the 2015 to 2016 budget. So paper CP bracket 4, 620/14 to 15 bracket 01. The administration is joining us in a moment. So a show of hands, please, if you're interested to ask questions. The secretary, please. Good afternoon, Mr. Ng, the secretary. Secretary, would you like to give us a briefing on your paper? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the 2015-2016 budget, education has the largest share in terms of the recurrent expenditure. For the year 15-16, we have got $71.4 billion. And it accounts for 22% of the recurrent government expenditure in that year, and this has the largest share among all the policy areas. When compared with the revised estimate for the year 2014-15, we have got an increase of $3.2 billion or 4.7%. Since the commencement of this term of the government, we have accumulated increase of 18% as compared with $60.4 billion. And in fact, for the student unit cost of aided primary schools, it has been increased by 20% from $44,451 in 2012-13 to $52,850 in 2015-16. For secondary schools, the corresponding figure has been increased by 35% from $49,000 to $66,000. The budget will implement the various initiatives announced in this year's policy address as well as those announced last year, like enhancing the voucher value under the pre-primary education voucher scheme, strengthening support for needy students, students with special educational needs, and non-Chinese speaking students, promoting life planning and vocational education, continue to increase subsidized places for post-secondary education, and promoting the qualifications framework. Mr. Chairman, the paper has already set out the details, so I would rather give you the floor to express your opinions.
Secretary, perhaps I missed something. You mentioned that in 2015-16, the recurrent expenses would be 3.5 billion higher than the estimates. Was that an error? Yes. Now I'd like to invite members to speak on this item of the agenda. Mr. Peter Chen, Dr. Ann Chang, Ms. Helena Wong, Mr. Wong Kok Heng, Dr. Kenneth Chen, Ms. Regina Yip. First round, 3 minutes including question and answer. Mr. Peter Chen, please. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to refer to paragraph 6 of the paper. I would like to ask about the initiatives introduced last year, and I'd like to know the results. With regards to career planning, I understand that the government set aside about $500,000 for each tertiary institute. Where did the money go? I understand that the institutes do not have to hire; they can spend the money elsewhere. Even if they need to hire someone, they wouldn't spend all of the $500,000 because even fresh graduates won't be paid that much. Can you tell us how the secondary schools are using their 500,000 grants? Thank you very much for the question. Life planning was introduced in September last year to provide additional resources to schools. The relevant papers have been circulated to various secondary schools, which sets out the targets and frameworks for life planning. In terms of resource allocation, we asked the schools to make life planning part of their DNA in the next few years. And time is needed to build a new culture and framework. So the resources, the money is really to train teachers. And that's the purpose of this $500,000. And if necessary, the schools can purchase relevant services in order to promote life planning. We interviewed more than 100 schools, and we conducted sampling surveys, and we found that more than 90% of the schools have started recruiting extra staff. And many of these schools have begun discussions with their own management committees if they are to incorporate the life planning culture. The management committees have started discussions. Can the administration provide an interim report for our reference? What do you mean by an interim report? They haven't conducted a review, so maybe a progress report. Let's just call it a progress report. We have discussed this item before, and perhaps I will circulate those papers again. Chairman, I don't want any old papers. You said you investigated more than 100 schools. Well, the work is ongoing, so how can they give you a progress report? Progress, I don't understand. I don't know how it's being carried out in the schools. And the secretary said they interviewed 100 schools. So I just want to know how the schools do life planning at the moment or promote life learning at the moment. He can only give you an update on the latest progress because the work is ongoing. The pace is different among different schools. Perhaps he can give you information on a single school, but I don't know what kind of data he gave you on the overall picture. Well, let me just perhaps put it this way. Different schools have different paces of development. So can you tell us how the schools are spending the $500,000 and what their staff are doing? Well, 500,000 is not enough to promote life learning. If they have 1,000 students and each will get only $500, so I was about to ask the same question. So perhaps, Secretary, you can have another private meeting with Peter Chung to discuss this. Dr. N. Chang. Thank you, Chairman. I have a question for the Secretary as well. I saw that the recurrent expenditure on education has reached 71.4 billion. And in 2012 to 13, we only had 60.4 billion, so the increase is more than 10 billions. And in terms of the number of students since the 1997 handover, the number of students have dropped by 20%. So in other words, the average cost for each student has increased a lot. Some people feel that we should inject even more money on education because it's very important, and I certainly agree with this. In the past, our expenditure on education usually amounts to about 20% of the overall expenditure, and right now we are at a similar percentage compared with costs on healthcare. It was also around 20% at that time. Right now, our healthcare expenditure only accounts for about 16%, while education is at 20% of the overall expenditure. So in other words, the government has maintained more or less the same ratio for expenditure on education. I'm not sure whether the Education Bureau has conducted any reviews. Now we are spending a specific amount of money for each student. In terms of the overall standard of our students, have we seen any improvement when compared with the past? In a lot of schools, the students and teachers don't seem to be very happy. So is there something wrong with the structure, despite the money we continue to give them? Are any adjustments necessary? So this is a very general question, but I think a lot of people in Hong Kong would feel that there are problems with our education system. In terms of the current student ratio, for the unit cost for secondary school students has reached $66,000. Compared with other regions or other developed economies, is our unit costs higher or lower? Perhaps you can just answer one of those two questions. You can pick one. Thank you very much. If we just look at unit costs, the difference is rather big. But if you think about the actual work we've done, especially for secondary school students, apart from recurrent costs on services, well, although the population trend is going down, we must look ahead to the future. We anticipate a growth in the future. So we have to be well prepared to welcome the next wave of students. So that's why the costs have increased. Ms. Helena Wong. And for the scholarship program for 2015-2016, more than 100 outstanding students will be sent to overseas universities. I recall during our panel meetings and also FC meetings that these 100 scholarship places should not only apply to undergraduate students. It should also apply to postgraduates. But according to your paper, it only applies to undergraduates. So are you ignoring the results of our meetings or the consultation meetings? I'm not sure what she means. She doesn't want to limit the scholarship to undergraduates. We have 100 places. Right now we have about more than 600 applicants. How many of them want to become postgraduates? Can you share those figures with me? If you look at the papers, all the papers you have prepared, it only applies to undergraduates. Starting from 2015 to 16 for each cohort, about 1,000 students will receive subsidy from the government to enroll in self-financing programs. I think this is nice to see. I think the government have to conduct reviews later on. Right now, a lot of students cannot enter the 8 major universities. They have to go for self-financing programs, whether it's associate degrees or degrees programs. And after they finish, a lot of them are on the huge debts of more than $400,000. We talked about it last time. Unfortunately, you weren't here, and you have not, you don't understand their plights. Of course, those who enroll in the 8 major universities have to pay $40,000 or so in school fee. But the rest don't get any kind of subsidy at all. Can you consider introducing a voucher scheme for students who want to enroll in self-financing programs? Of course, you can set some criteria for the programs. Is this something you will consider so that students who are poor can still enter university? Thank you very much for the question. First of all, as I explained last time, the 1,000 places targets industries which lack manpower. So this is different from subsidies. We have places for both degree and associate degree programs, and apart from non-means loans, we have provided subsidies. I understand that some students might still face financial difficulties, and if a student is in a $400,000 to $500,000 debts, he might have spent it on somewhere else, because we have provided substantial subsidies. Mr. Wong Kok Heng, on life planning and career counseling service, I have some questions for the Secretary. Although the government has set aside some resources, but they are still limited in nature. If you can mobilize businesses to take part, this is something we have to do. It's important. If you can achieve that, then our work will be that much more efficient. In terms of life planning and career counseling service, how many companies would you target? And the second question is, how many industries have been involved? Do you have any idea? And the third question is, how many students or schools do you hope to help? You said you interviewed 100 schools. I just want to know your direction. How many students are you going to target? These are my 3 questions. Thank you very much. Let me address the third question first. We hope that all publicly funded secondary schools can benefit, starting from upper secondary schools, and we'll extend it to junior secondary school students. We hope all secondary school graduates can have a clear idea on their careers.
全面，不過呢。
We would like to have it accommodated within the QF. We have got 20 industry training advisory committees. And of course, there's also the business school partnership program. We have got 80 partners who are in active cooperation with us. We'd like to push it to 120. We aren't just talking about one single company. Like the Lions Club, it is now cooperating with 60 schools. And then for the Retail Management Association, I think it has been promoting the idea among many SMEs. So it would be good to have exposure in such companies. And therefore, it is very comprehensive. I just want to remind you that it was only started in last September. So we've only been running it for 6 months. I think it is good. I hope that the administration will step up the publicity and education so that both parents and students alike will understand this trend, and they should not be stigmatized and they won't get a wrong impression when they participate in such activities. Dr. Kenneth Chen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have got something new, and that's in relation to the Hong Kong Mainland Sister School Exchanges program. It is a pilot program costing $200 million. I think the exchanges have been getting more and more frequent. I think you are trying to have more interaction between the schools in both places. Now, this year, you're going to spend $200 million. In the coming year, are you going to implement what Mrs. Fanny Law has suggested? She was the former Permanent Secretary for Education, and she's a delegate to the NPC. She would like to get new teachers going to the mainland for a month. I want to know whether the Secretary will tell her that NPC delegates should not be instructed as to how to deliver his portfolio, because after all, it is a one country, two systems. Because we're afraid that the exchange sessions may become a brainwashing exercise, starting from primary school, secondary school, undergraduate education, as well as teacher education. I don't think he needs to answer. He's the secretary. Mr. Chairman, since your return from Beijing, you might have to sing the song that you have a Chinese heart. But then, be it the case of the UGC's RAE exercise and breach of confidentiality, now you were trying to answer the question on his behalf. I don't think you need to go all out to answer the question for him. He's the secretary. It's wrong to expect him failing to answer the question. Well, maybe next time he won't be the secretary again. Today, he's the secretary. He's indeed the secretary. He's still the secretary. So, Secretary, are you the Secretary? Do you still hold that power? Or are you having your powers being grabbed gradually by people like Fanny Law, who are NPC delegates? I'm the Secretary for Education, and I'm responsible for the policies of education in Hong Kong. Anybody making a suggestion concerning education will be considered by us. Anybody may do so, but then we are accountable, we are responsible. So does it mean that after Fanny Law has made such a suggestion, you'll really follow this up? Secretary, as I have said, many people will give us suggestions and we'll all try to listen. Mrs. Regina Yip. 2 questions. First, on life planning. I asked a question, but it wasn't answered. Now, first of all, for the Hong Kong Guidance Teachers Association, we have Dr. Esther Hui. She has already left the association so as to join the Hong Kong Jockey Club so as to deliver life planning programs for schools. Mr. Do you know about that program? I think the Jockey Club has set aside $500 million for this purpose. Now, you're giving $500,000 to schools, each of them. Now, we don't want it to be contracted out. Now, I understand that you can easily get a certificate by joining a program so that you can include it in your CV for the purpose of seeking enrollment. I'm afraid that we are putting the cart before the horse. I think you were referring to Dr. Esther Ho. I attended the ceremony at which Jockey Club announced the program earmarking $500 million, but I know nothing about the details. I understand that dozens of schools are taking part in a study program. Well, $500 million is a huge sum. I think you should know more about it. You have got so many subordinates. You should ask for a brief from the other party. Just now, it's been said that we haven't got enough places. Now, you are saying that 38.4% of the young people are having post-secondary education. But then the question is, are we going to repeat what has happened in Taiwan? There is oversupply of graduates. We've got 8 subvented institutions. We have got over 40,000 students. So maybe they can't even make $10,000 a month upon graduation. In Taiwan, we've already got an oversupply of graduates. Mr. Yip, I think you did mention this point. I think perhaps we should follow the example of Germany, that is, improve our vocational education. So, Mr. Ng, should we go after quantity or quality? Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mrs. Yip. The honourable member referred to vocational education. In the middle of this year, the relevant task force will come up with recommendations concerning vocational education. That means that we need more resources, and that means that we'll be having multiple pathways for our young people. Mr. Yip, Deputy Chair. Mr. Chairman, I want to ask a direct question. Before the budget was delivered, many people, including myself, have strongly asked for the following. That is, for students at self-financing institutions who are already paying expensive tuition fees should be given certain subvention. I think this is not the first time we raised such an idea. It was first raised a few years ago. And this year, we have got huge surpluses in the budget. So I just wondered if the Secretary has ever raised the point with the FS so as to make such a proposal to him. Now, what we have seen in the budget is that nothing will be done and has been done to this group of students. In other words, this group of students have to pay a lot of money by way of tuition fees, and as a result, they graduate with a lot of debt. So I want to know if you would consider some measures to help them. Secretary, thank you. For the year 15-16, when compared with the previous year, for our overall expenditure, we have an increase of $5.2 billion. It is not a small sum. And then for the 8 new initiatives raised last year, 4 of them were related to post-secondary education. And as a result, we have to increase over 2,200 places. And to tie in with that increase, we need to introduce more grants and loans, etc. Deputy Chair, I ask a very clear question. I would like to know whether the Bureau has come up with concrete measures, and do you think that it is a problem? I understand that you do have other initiatives, but then this specific one hasn't been followed up. Well, I received dozens of proposals, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Deputy, so we need to prioritize them. Well, in the middle of the year, the Committee on Free Kindergarten Education will deliver its report, and it will demand a lot of resources. Therefore, we need to prioritize for higher education. In the previous year, we have already made major adjustments. Mr. Chairman, does it mean that the Secretary is saying that for students of self-financing institutions, you don't quite care about their tuition fees and you don't think that you need to work on it now? Well, Secretary, we are concerned about all areas, but it's a matter of prioritizing them. Albert Ho and then Fernando Zhang. Mr. Chairman, yes, we do spend a lot of money on education, and as the Secretary has said, the increase has been huge. But then for the associate degree students, they are still receiving scanty help. Then the subvented places are inadequate. And then sometimes you spend money on non-local students. This is particularly the case for the postgraduate programs. Half of the students are not locals. I want to know about the amount of subvention. And is it right for us to spend so much money on non-local students? I would think that there should be a difference in our treatment, in our subvention for students who are locals and students who are non-locals. Secretary, I'd like to thank the member for his question. Now, I think we need to divide the question into two parts. First of all, if a local graduate, is interested in research work, we do welcome it. On many occasions, we have already reported that if a local graduate would like to have a place in the research programs, he will be given priority. And then every city is competing for talents from other places, and we encourage research at different levels so that there will be interaction and then we can have progress. And this way, by having the non-locals, we can also help our local graduates to excel. It is complementary. Every city would like to do the same. We're worried that if we don't provide adequate support and if our attractiveness is weakened, then it will also jeopardize the research opportunities of our own students. So it isn't a matter of subvention, it's a matter of attracting talents.
Chairman, the Secretary did not address my concern on the amounts of subvention for each student. We want to know the amount of subvention spent on foreign students. And if we don't have enough foreign students, what's the reason? Nurturing local talent or students is the most important. Some people study in Hong Kong, but they don't necessarily work here afterwards. And sometimes we allow foreign students to continue to live and work in Hong Kong, so there are policy implications. Thank you very much. First, it sometimes takes a few studying research programs sometimes takes a few years. Sometimes, depending on the area of research, for instance, for healthcare researchers, these are rather mega projects. How many students are you talking about? Please provide the data later, okay? Dr. Fernando Chang, Chairman for SEN students. It has been addressed in the policy address this year. Providing subventions to SEN students and students with special needs. A dedicated teacher would be employed, but we have no such details yet under the CCF. And for preschoolers, the queue is getting longer and longer. A lot of students have received assessments, but they still had to wait for a long time, and as such, the golden learning age of 6 years of age has been missed, and we are still waiting for the details. And in the Integrated Education Subcommittee, we have done a lot of work in the past 2 years. We have looked at a lot of reports and researches. And according to a study conducted by the Secretariat, integrated plays an important role in our education system. The government has implemented integrated education for more than 10 years. I think it's time to conduct an overall assessment or review instead of just reviewing certain bits and pieces. Of course, we are happy at the government's positive response on our report. According to a report by the Equal Opportunities Commission, we are not well prepared in terms of teacher qualifications. Would the government review the positioning on integrated education and early intervention, the choice of schools, dissemination of information, conflicts between students and schools, etc.? Any response from the Secretary? Thank you very much. The establishment of SENCO or SEN coordinator is important, and we are considering the feasibility. It's an important step for poor primary school students. They receive lunch subsidies as part of CCF. And in terms of preschool education, Mr. Matthew Chang announced the introduction of extra places. And we also need dedicated manpower or talent. We need to work together to tackle this issue. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Secretary. Next, Dennis Kwok, who will be the last person to speak on this item. 3 minutes, please. I'd like to follow up on the issue of SEN raised by Dr. Fernando Chang. Recently, we have met the parents of some SEN students. Right now, you are providing support under the Community Care Fund. The mandate of CCF is to help people who are outside the social security net. For various reasons, they are not able to receive regular assistance from the government. And the issue faced by SEN parents is something the CCF cannot cover. As the Secretary said, we need a lot of occupational therapists and speech therapists. If kids need to consult OTs or STs, they have to spend up to $80,000 to $100,000 per month for therapies. This is extremely expensive, and it's something most families rather cannot afford, and yet they are not able to enjoy the privileges of the CCF because they fall outside the security nets. We are talking about middle-class families. They need to pay a lot every month to help their children in order to secure OTs or STs. If our children can receive support at an early stage, then it would help with their learning. Of course, we agree with the introduction of funds into CCF, but we are still looking at a gap. We have to bridge the gap for middle-class families. Secretary, thank you very much. When you look at the demographics on the number of primary and secondary school SEN students, and we have more than 60,000 secondary school students, and most of them have learning and reading difficulties, learning and reading and writing difficulties, and they make up the biggest percentage of SEN students, and there are big differences for different groups. And we hope to provide assistance on all fronts. And we have 3 tiers in terms of assistance. And we work with other departments as well. And the Social and Welfare Department is also aware of the issue. Thank you very much. The discussion for this item has finished. And we can move on to the next item, implementation of applied learning in senior secondary curriculum, LC paper number CV4620/14-15 So I'd like to invite the Secretary to walk us through this paper briefly. Members who wish to speak or ask questions can raise their hands, and the Secretariat can note down the order. Secretary, please, so perhaps we can wait for the other officials to come in. So please be seated as soon as possible. Secretary, Permanent Secretary, please be seated. Can the Secretary walk us through the paper, please? Thank you, Chairman. As part of the senior secondary curriculum and enhanced learning diversity, we respect the individual interests and capabilities of students, and we have decided to provide extra choices in terms of learning. And apart from the core programs, students can choose to enroll in 2 to 4 elective courses. Apart from traditional courses, applied learning courses are also made available. We have 6 areas under APL which are closely linked to development in Hong Kong, so that students can learn from real-life scenarios and grasp the relevant theories, and they would better understand their career paths. Students can choose traditional and applied learning courses at the same time, and both streams go hand in hand, and 1 to 2 elective courses can be enrolled. Since 2010, it's the 6th year of senior secondary curriculum, and we have maintained more or less the same number of students. And the percentage of students enrolling in such courses remains at 7 to 8%, and we have 310 schools participating, and there's an increasing trend on the number of schools. We are very happy that APL can help the students in terms of academic and career progression, and the results of APL would be classified into attain and attain with distinction, and they would be recognized at levels 2 and 3 of HKDSE, respectively, for further studies and work. And according to statistics from the last few years, about 90% of the students can achieve attain status, and more than 20% of students achieved the status of attain with distinction, which is satisfactory. And we have also launched a pilot scheme with the qualifications framework. Certain courses are linked to QF, and for students who have completed APL courses apart from HKDSE, they can also secure qualifications under QF. According to studies, various stakeholders, including students, teachers, education institutes, and parents, are very satisfied with applied learning. The overall satisfaction ratings have been high. The schools have observed noticeable improvement among students, and the parents feel that APL can widen the horizons of their children and help them mature as a person, and their interpersonal skills have also been enhanced. And some students choose to continue studies and eventually enroll in degree programs, and some students opts to start relevant careers. And so far we have seen satisfactory progress in this program, and we would make sure that our students can remain competitive in the 21st century. Let me read out the name list. Dr. Kenneth Chen, Mr. Charles Mok, Mr. Yip Kin Yun, Dr. Fernando Chang, Ms. Regina Yip, and Mr. Ray Chen. Anyone else? If not, I'd like to work out how much time we need. 3 minutes, including question and answer. Dr. Chen. Thank you, Chairman. The Secretary has done his best to convince us of the development of these subjects. He talked about the number of students enrolled, and he mentioned some percentages, and he assured us of the future and careers of these students. But you can see that for full-time subsidized programs, the number of subsidized places have remained at a very low level down the years. We only have 15,000 or so places, and they are willing to introduce extra places. And these programs are not recognized well enough in order to encourage students to sign in, and it seems that the government's doing something for the sake of it and just trying to provide a few more choices for students. This is a really core issue. You have subjects related to aviation, comic design, mobile app development, building technology. I don't even know what that is. After finishing these courses, how can you ensure that you can follow up with these students and that they can apply what they've learned? Whether or not they can enter subsidized institutions, you have to make sure that their qualifications or credentials are still recognized. Secretary.
I would like to defer to the Deputy Secretary. So the Secretary is not going to answer my question. Mr. Chairman, we did track the students in relation to their career development. Now, in fact, students do vary a lot in relation to their ability and their inclination. Some students are taking 3 or 4 electives, and they're taking the APL in addition to the traditional electives. On the other hand, there are also other students who are more career-minded, and they may not have the academic standards to get a place in the universities. So they would rather take an APL or even 2 APL subjects to prepare them to seek work. I think such data should have been included in the paper instead of just blowing your own trumpet. I don't see the figures here. You haven't told us that you have been tracing or tracking them, because if you can really convince us, then more students may be encouraged to take these subjects. Secretary, yes, I think there should be better and more information, and the information should have been collated better. Charles Mock, I get the same impression as Dr. Kenneth Chen. Information is inadequate. On the face of it, we have got a decreasing number of students taking the subjects. And then among the various subjects, I want to know whether some of them are less popular while others are more popular. Say, for example, in Appendix 1, we don't actually get the total number of students taking each course, because if you do a head count, you have dozens of them. If a total of 4,000 students are taking the subjects with a few hundred schools, so if you do the calculation, it means that just a few students are taking each course. Am I right? And I'm not too sure how the courses are provided. Of course, I can see for myself that the post-secondary education institutions are providing the courses, but then is the course being delivered on the school campus or not? If the number of students who are interested is too low, then probably the course will not be offered. And for Category A and Category B subjects, I think even for Category A subjects, sometimes some subjects are not popular enough to be offered. So please tell us which APL subjects are more popular. Another question is who decided what courses are to be provided? Say, for example, for aviation, is it because of the popularity of the drama on a similar theme? So have you ever consulted the views of the relevant association, professional body, or the stakeholders in different industries? Secretary, I'd like to ask the Deputy Secretary to answer. We have a APL subject committee under the Curriculum Institute. They have experts, and they regularly consult the different industries. It is right to think that we do evolve over time. We will look at the interests of the students. Say, for example, for creative studies and for business management and law, we have seen a slight decrease. On the other hand, applied science and engineering and production have seen an increase in the number of interested students. Sometimes a subject may not be that popular. You may think so, but in fact, we are having 40 subjects in 6 areas of students. So it is quite unlike the traditional delivery of programs by teachers. Secretary, yes, 300 schools, a few thousand students. I just visited a school, and in fact, different schools in the same area are sharing out. Say, for example, for the current year, a school may be taking students from neighboring schools. and then it is on a rotational basis. Secretary, I have been waiting to ask a similar question, because if we want to have it sustainable, we have to be sure about the quality of the teachers. Can you provide more information in this regard? Yes, certainly, Mr. Chairman. Next, our Deputy Chair. Mr. Chairman, if I may refer you to Appendix 5, this in relation to the number of enrollees. I think it is decreasing all the time. I think it is a matter of a decrease of 27% for the first 5 years. What about the total number of senior secondary students? Do we also see a corresponding decrease in the number of student population? So that's my first question. Second question is, if I may know about the APL subjects under DSE. I used to be a secondary school's principal. If you would like to run APL subjects, sometimes you have to dip into your pocket to fund the programs. Is it still happening? I want to know whether all the expenditure will be reimbursed by the government by way of a subvention. Now, schools are not profit-making organizations. So if we can't find the money from the government by way of reimbursement, then schools' ability to offer such subjects will be affected. Secretary, I'd like to defer to Mr. Yip. Mr. Chairman, the first question is about the decrease in the number of students taking the APL subjects. I think this corresponds to the fall in student population. Like in 2010-2012, there were 6,690 students taking APL subjects. There were 79,322 students sitting for DSE. And then for 2013-2015, we have 5,100 students taking APL, and that accounts for 7.4% of the total student population. And that's why we've been saying that it is quite steady. There is about 7 to 8% of the students are taking APL subjects. We have a DLG, Diversified Learning Grant, and we provide full subvention. But then there's also discretion. If necessary, schools can approach us, and some schools did do so, and we still want to impose certain rules so as to make sure that it is proper. 7.4% in 2013-15, but then it was 8.4% in the year 2010 to 2012. In other words, a decrease of about 10%. But then for 2014 to 16, the figure is 7.6%. So we're hovering between 7 and 8%. The difference is great. So can you not provide more information to us? Next, Fernando Jiang. Yes, for applied learning, it is important because not all of them are academically oriented, and we are also providing more learning opportunities to our students. For SEN students, I think applied learning is also important. This is because the academic standards may not be that good, like in subjects like English, mathematics, Chinese, and liberal studies. So maybe through the applied learning subjects, they can develop an interest, and at the end of the day, they will be assisted in their career development. But the paper doesn't give us the number of SEN students taking the APL subjects, though I know that the total number is decreasing. So can you not tell us whether ASEAN students are being taken care of in this context. And then for special schools, it is even more difficult for them because they haven't got their own curriculum, and then they have to develop their own APL courses. In other words, the special schools involved won't be great, won't be large. And then if you turn to Appendix 2, the number is getting smaller and smaller. As of last year, there were only 30 students. Only about 30 students with SEN could take applied learning courses. Don't you think that is on the low side? Are you going to review it? And then for special schools, there is a unique difficulty because students have to go to other schools to take the courses. It is inconvenient to the schools, to the parents, and to the students. Do you have a way to improve upon this arrangement? Secretary, Mr. Yip can answer the question. Well, we have the adapted APL courses for students with intellectual disabilities. I think things are quite steady. Say, for example, the number of schools range between 48 and 37 from the year 2010-2012 to 2014-16. Number of students hovering around 200. We will keep it in view and no. I'm talking about the number of special schools, Appendix 2, rather than students with intellectual disabilities. In the year 2014-16, 7 special schools, 30 students. So you see a fall in the number of special schools as well as the number of students involved. We have got over 60 special schools, and we need to bear that in mind. We are in the process of having a review. We have to find out why the figures aren't that satisfactory. We'll try our best to give you the information. Yes, do so after the meeting. I have to skip Regina Yip because she's not in the conference room. Mr. Raymond Chen, I'm familiar with this because for 1 year I taught applied learning at a secondary school, and that's about radio program production. How many schools? How many students? I taught at one organization, and the places were all taken up. Now, I don't think we can really take good care of the SEN students. There was one who was wheelchair bound, and she couldn't enter the studio. At that time, I was helpless. I couldn't get the wheelchair to go into the studio, so she could not take part in the radio host and program production. Now, sometimes the titles may sound grand, but please don't have any illusions. We have aviation studies, and we have got IT, etc. Like even for taking the radio host and program production, you can't grow up to become a radio host. It is more like an interest group. It depends on the teacher qualification. Well, now, for students who have full attendance, then we'll give her or him attained. And then anybody who has ever had a praising word from me, then I would have given him attained with distinction. Now, just now we were told that maybe if 10 students from a school took part, then it will be fully reimbursed. Now, I want to know whether you are going to allow the organizations to run 2 or 3 courses instead of just one?
Somewhat.
Have you seen any situations in which the classes or courses were under-enrolled and they had to be cancelled? Right now, you have not shared any statistics. When I look at the figure of 4,000, I'm not sure what it's supposed to mean. Do you have such figures, Secretary, Permanent Secretary? Chairman, the mechanism is rather flexible. Some courses are under-enrolled, but we still keep them in order to satisfy the students. Some very popular courses, we would review them every year, and we would encourage the course providers to be as accommodating as possible. Some schools can undertake the entire course because some schools might favor certain industries, and as some of you said, some courses serve as an introduction. They mentioned the enrollment figures of 5,000 or so, or 6,000 or so. Are you satisfied with it? Secretary, Ms. Regina Yip's not here, so it's my turn to ask the question. Mr. Ray Chan mentioned that the applied learning courses are rather like hobby classes. Perhaps you can clarify that. According to the paper, you said you will consider introducing a tier under HKDSE to in order to reflect the students' progress in APL. So what is the thinking behind? Some students might perform to a level equivalent of level 3. Right now, we cannot help those students who are at levels 4 and 5. So the HKAA is considering helping those students. Do you have to do the same for each subject? It really depends on the performance of the student in that specific subject. Let's say if you have 40 courses, if some are assessed and some are not, then some people will just flock to some courses. Would that happen? APL courses are different from other courses because they're still very new. So we would see how many students are interested, and the courses would first be held by universities, and some courses might be cancelled if they prove unpopular, while others might be made more frequent. So we will continue to test and experiment in order to satisfy the students' needs. So we are still at an exploratory stage. Mr. Ray, why are you qualified to teach? I have worked in radio production for more than 10 years. Dr. Kenneth Chen, 3 minutes, please, including question and answer. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to make a follow-up question. As the PS said, we have to think about examination and assessment as well. The HKEAA is empowered with the obligation to draw up assessments and exams. I'm not saying that some courses shouldn't be launched because of cost consideration. Some courses are necessary for the students' careers. Despite low enrollment, we must still go on. We cannot just consider cost effectiveness. Last year, the HKEAA said the exam fees will have to be raised because the number of students is decreasing, but then they still have to do the same amount of work. So for these APL courses, would the government have an obligation to support these courses instead of encouraging the HKEAA to raise the exam costs? will the government even consider waiving certain exam fees? Thank you very much. In the beginning phase, if we see good participation among the courses, we will try to expand it. So in the short run, the cost might be high. If we only have a very low number of students, then the courses might not be well recognized. I think the secretary doesn't really understand my question. The AgendaI said they have to increase the exam fees because of the low number of students. But before they make the decision, would the government try to think of another way to help the AgendaI so that they won't have to raise the fees? The situation is they cannot be self-sustaining. So what are you going to do to help them? I understand your question. But at the beginning of each of a new product or service, we need to invest money, and after some time, then the situation might change. Thank you very much, Secretary. That's the end of this item. Let's enter the next item. The Hong Kong Special Administrative Region Government Scholarship Fund and Self-Financing Post-Secondary Scholarship Fund, LC paper number CB bracket 4620/14215 03. We will invite the Deputy Secretary, Mr. Yang, from the Education Bureau. Let's invite the administration in. Mr. Brian Low, Deputy Secretary, Ms. Pik-wan Yong, Principal Assistant Secretary. If any members wish to speak or ask questions, please raise your hands. Under-Secretary, please start when you're ready. Thank you, Chairman. The young people are the future of our society, and we want to encourage the strive for excellence. Through the HKSAR Government Scholarship Fund, or GSF, or the Self-Financing Post-Secondary Scholarship Scheme, or SPSS, we want to encourage the strive for excellence, and it's also in line with our vision for the private and public education sectors to go hand in hand. And both schemes are comparable in terms of commitment, and more than 7,000 students have benefited, and the total funds exceeded $75 million. Apart from recognizing academic excellence among tertiary students, we have also recognized students with other talents. Both funds recognize outstanding SEN students for overcoming learning difficulties, and we have a series of initiatives available to support the growth of tertiary institutions in Hong Kong, and as well as supporting the students so that all students can receive tertiary education despite their backgrounds. Thank you very much for the briefing. The list of members who will speak: Dr. Fernando Chang, Mr. Yip Kin Yun, Ms. Helena Wong, Mr. Dennis Kwok, and Dr. Kenneth Chen. 3 minutes, including question and answer. Dr. Fernando Chang. The government is providing scholarships for students based on their performance. And of course, we welcome the idea of the government to support both publicly funded and self-financing students, and I'm more concerned with SEN students. As Mr. Young said, the government has considered SEN students. In terms of the number of students, however, both funds add up to 7,600 students. But for SEN students, the total number of beneficiaries was only about 100 or so. So the percentage was only make up 1.3% of the total. So this ratio is rather low. So what would our SEN students think about this situation? The number of recognized SEN students is even higher than that. So the government has to conduct a review on the number of places or ratio of scholarship places afforded to SEN students. For those with special learning needs, if they have meritorious performances, I think we should do more. For instance, the fund of the scholarship of $10,000 can be adjusted upwards. According to our initial figures, if you compare the number of SEN students on scholarship to the total number of SEN students, the ratio is around 15%. So for every 100 SEN students, about 15 can be awarded scholarships. And in 2013, when we went to the Finance Committee, our thinking was that under the two scholarships, we wanted to benefit 100 students. This is our first year, and we will increase the amount gradually. Under the two scholarships, we hope that each of them can benefit about 100 SEN students. The Undersecretary said that the percentage of students who can secure a scholarship is similar among SEN and non-SEN students. So I think that SEN students have to overcome a lot of difficulties before they get admitted, so you should provide some incentive. I think the current percentage of 1.3% is way too low. It should be raised. Chairman, SEN students are actually eligible for a number of other scholarships. If their performance is merited, they can apply for many other scholarships. When you compare the percentage with other scholarships, it might seem low, but as I said, as a percentage of all SEN students, the percentage is more than 10%. If we double the fund, then the figure might hit 20 to 30%. This is a very high percentage. When you consider the fact that we have 60 to 70,000 students in publicly funded schools, and only a few thousand of them can receive scholarships, then you can see that the percentage for SEN students is already high. I'd like to follow up on what Mr. Fernando Chung said. He mentioned the scholarships for SEN students. I agree that we should encourage the students as much as possible. I think the biggest challenge faced by SEN students in terms of entering tertiary institutes, it's not about the scholarships. It's the fact that the government is not providing enough support in other ways. So that's why the base is very low, and the actual number getting admitted to universities is also low. The key is to allow these SEN students to to maximize their potential. Apart from scholarships, we should look at the bigger picture, especially for SEN students. We have very big problems with mismatch. And meanwhile, I have another question for the Secretary. Under our existing scholarships, we have the same criteria for both local and mainland students. I have some figures on hand, and it shows the distribution of scholarships among local and non-local students. For degree programs, the numbers are similar, but for postgraduates, non-locals get far more in scholarships than local students. Of course, we should not distinguish between local and non-local students. We should look at their performances only. But for scholarships, the situation is a bit different. I think it really depends on who we want to target and who we want to appeal to. We must have a very clear objective. In Hong Kong, do we really have to or need to appeal or encourage more Hong Kong students to study postgraduate programs? Of course, some of them would opt to study overseas, but I also know that a lot of young people want to continue their studies in Hong Kong. If their capabilities allow it, should we provide more financial incentives? Can part of our scholarships be dedicated to local students only? We see that less local students are willing to continue their studies in Hong Kong, and I hope this will eventually change.
You've said that you may not need an answer, so is it necessary? Perhaps not. Mr. Dennis Kwok, other than you, sir, we haven't got anybody else who's from the pro-establishment camp. All the remaining members are pan-democrats. I don't know whether they think that education isn't as important as the business that they are attending to. But then I will leave that aside. I think Fernando Cheung made a valid point. For students with SEN, I think we know the number. But then for the Endeavour Merit Award, if you have autism or specific learning disabilities, a total of 8 such students got the award. And then again, in the case of the Endeavour Scholarship, again the two groups would only add up to 15. And in fact, you get $10,000 each. So the total number of people is small, and then the amount of money is small. By comparison, for the scholarship for outstanding performance, you get $40,000, between $40,000 and $80,000 a year. We are talking about the smart students. So, in fact, I think SEN students should be given more help. Now, SEN students need a lot of help from us. I think we should have channeled more money to them and for them. Of course, other outstanding students should be rewarded, but I think they, by comparison, don't need as much help from us as the SEN students. So I don't quite understand your logic. Well, in our paper, we have already talked about the philosophy of the scholarships. We like to reward those who have outstanding performance in both academic and non-academic fields. In the first place, we had the scholarship for outstanding performance. In other words, when we first set up the scholarship fund, we would like to give recognition to students at universities who perform very well academically. Of course, as time passes, we know that we need to expand, and we have the Talent Development Scholarship and the Reaching Out Award. This is because we want to encourage and give recognition to students who excel in other fields, like achievements or talent in non-academic areas. And for reaching out, this is to enable more students to go out. And then, of course, lastly, we have the Endeavour Merit Award. More excellent students are gaining access to universities. They should be given recognition, and that's why we have created a special award for them. I don't think it goes against the original purpose, and I don't think the amounts are not right. Dr. Helena Wong. Mr. Chairman, we have got different kinds of scholarship here. What about the vetting mechanism? Is it transparent? Is there any assurance to make sure that the selection is fair? Under Secretary, for the two funds, I think the selection criteria differ. For the Hong Kong SAR Government Scholarship Fund, it depends on the amount of money available for a specific year. Then we can tell how many students will be given recognition. And then according to the number of students enrolled in each institution, we will divide up the amount, and then it is up to individual institution to decide on the awardees. So for the SARG Scholarship Fund, institutions can make the recommendations, but of course when the recommendation list arrives our office, we will see if the criteria have been met. But then it's up to the institutions to do the selection. For the self-financing post-secondary scholarship scheme, again, the institutions will make recommendations, and then we have a committee to have the final say to decide who will eventually be given the award. So basically, we rely on the institutions to carry out the selection. In the case of the self-financing fund, the institutions will carry out the first round of selection. Will it be sort of nominated by the schools? I think you are referring to another scheme, that is the scheme for 100 students per cohort. We have got a selection committee, and the committee has got the vetting criteria. It is up to students to put in an application form themselves, and then the selection committee will carry out the selection process. We haven't got the information. Which one are you talking about? You mean the 100 students per cohort? The scholarship for excellence. I think it should have been asked at the first item of the agenda. I think previously we have issued a paper for electrical members. If you need more information, we can certainly make it available to you. I also ask for greater transparency. If you need more information after sending the paper to the member, please approach us. Dr. Kenneth Chen. Well, in fact, the selection criteria have been given in the paper, but then it's very general. You need to have excellent academic performance, leadership, good communication skills. Two other points, that is a major contribution to the institution or society, and or strong commitment to the Hong Kong community. I think we have already gathered some experience concerning the scholarships, but then the criteria are just too broadly worded. Now, of course, recently, the senior management of the universities made a lot of political comments, like the president of the Baptist U. He also asked students not to pursue democracy. And then another vice chancellor also made a lot of comments concerning the political reform. Now, if the criteria are so broadly worded, as a teaching staff member, I just wonder whether the selection will be carried out in such a way that your color will be decisive. That is, whether you are in the yellow camp, blue camp, or whether you are an activist, or whether you hide yourself in the ivory tower. So it seems that the criteria are sort of very clear, but then I'm afraid that it may be subject to abuse, because someone may have good academic results and yet he may be a movement leader, and then he may be discouraged from putting in an application. Dr. Chen has some concerns. If he's worried about whether one's colors will have a bearing on the chance of success, I think others may also harbor a similar concern. But I can assure you that politics don't have a role here. We always respect academic freedom and administrative independence for the institutions. Now, for individuals, it will be difficult for me to say, but then for universities as a whole, I don't think they will have too much political perspective in the decisions. I think the Undersecretary can simply say that you don't take into account political factors. You will simply look at the contribution and commitment. Well, I think he wasn't referring to me individually, personally. He was worried about the case of the universities. I'm afraid that they would follow the inclination of their supervisors. Mr. Low. Well, we do have objective criteria. Say, for example, you need to have a certain GPA for your academic performance. So you can't sort of be too discretionary. Say, for example, for the scholarship for outstanding performance, academic performance will be given top priority. And then for talent development scholarship, you need to show that you have excelled in sports, music, etc. All right, finally, it's my turn. For the talent development scholarship, what about sports? 302 were given the award, but then for arts, just 106. In other words, just 1/3 when compared with those who are talented in sports. I want to know why we have such a small number of students who get the award because of their cultural or artistic performance. Is it because you have a cap or what? Or is it because of the standards? I'm not too sure, but please tell us. Why is it that there are fewer people getting the award in the category of culture, arts and design? Or is it because there aren't too many international competitions? In the case of sports and games, you have the national games, etc., etc. Mr. Chairman, we don't actually cap the maximum number of recipients. So it is just a natural outcome. Chairman, you wondered whether fewer students took part in such a competition or our performance hasn't been that good. Well, I think we're quite new in this area. We've only accumulated the experience for a year or two. But then I think your point is valid. We'll try to keep it in view and we'll watch it for another year or two. Yes, I think you need to spend time to study the matter.
Is it the students are not aware of the scholarship, or is it because of your assessment criteria, or else? I think you have to look into that, because scholarships serve as an incentive for students. Chairman, we will go back and look into the issue. We might have to talk to these institutions to see if they would organize more contests to help the students. And for the Best Progress Awards, there are certain objective considerations, I think. So from 0 to 100 means 100% improvement. If I increase to 0.1.5, what about it? How do you really objectively gauge the extent of improvement? Under Secretary, please. Thank you very much for the question. By progress, we would look at both the base and the extent of improvement. But for the Best Progress Award, or BPA, we do have a minimum threshold. Well, if I'm already very bright and I improve a little bit, so will I be eligible? We have to meet a minimum grade or points, and then we would look at the progress in a over a 2-year period. So in other words, you are encouraging those who start off low to improve, right? If you are already at the top, we have other awards. So for this award, we want to encourage those who are in the middle. We'll go back and look at the criteria again and see if there's anything we can adjust. On this item, do we have any other comments or questions? We still have a bit of time. If not, let's conclude today. And any other business, if we have any other business, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.